What would you do if in your small town there was a serial killer who was known for killing and taking the teeth of his victims, and you knew you were next? Or if you were lost on a camping trip, only to realize that you were being followed by something that was imitating the voice of one of your friends? Or if in your attempt to do your job, you couldn't help but notice something just out of view, only it kept getting closer and closer until there was no sense of peace left? Or if in an attempt to make peace with a loved one you'd recently lost, you inadvertently might have summoned a zombie to come? Or if in your attempt to try and be nice to the weird guy at the office, you ended up being hunted by a serial killer? If any of these questions or stories seem interesting to you, please make sure to stick here till the end of the video. Hello, I'm Cece, and welcome back to the Crucible of Character, where today we have 5 scary Reddit stories for you. Thank you all for the recent support that you've given me. I'm going to make a push to try to put out a video every day this week. Please, if you enjoy these big long videos, or even just the single story videos, make sure to like, comment your thoughts and questions, and even your thoughts on what I say or the lessons that you learn throughout the stories. And please, if you enjoy the content, make sure to subscribe. I'm trying to get to 100 subscribers by the end of the year, and I need your help. Without further ado, the stories. Today we have another scary story from the r/no sleep subreddit. It's entitled, "There's a creature in my neighborhood collecting people's teeth. Now it's coming for mine." And it was written by SAG Official. And it starts like this. Danny's brother was a jerk, but he had also had the biggest TV. So that's how we ended up at Mike's. It was pretty much what you'd expect. Cheap booze, Mario Kart, and more crap talking than a Modern Warfare 2 lobby. Another benefit of choosing to go to Mike's was that the guy almost always had weed. So of course, by midnight, the entire living room was enveloped in a haze of thick blue smoke. At some point, it was decided it was time for us to go home. By Mike, if you can believe it. And then, suddenly, there we were, back on the street, stumbling and laughing, in the way a bunch of 17-year-olds who thought they were going to live forever. One by one, we tapered off as we set off for our respective homes, until finally, it was just Blake and me. I don't even know where the crap Reese went. "You know what's messed up?" said Blake suddenly, turning to face me. We had been walking for the better part of 20 minutes, and up until this point, things had been pretty jovial. Now, his expression was somber and intense, like a confidant relaying some critical piece of classified information. "What's that?" "This is right around where that Mallory girl disappeared. You remember, from last summer?" I thought back to the events of last August. One of the things about small communities, if anything ever happens, you can bet your bottom dollar that come that evening everybody in town would have heard about it. And Millhaven was no exception. For Mallory Cavish, news came almost immediately. I was in my room at the time, thumbing through one of my brother Dean's old Dragon Ball books, when I had heard sudden commotion from downstairs. Turns out, Mallory's mom and mine were in a book club together. We're pretty close, in fact. And so naturally, when it happened, my mom was one of the first people who got the call. I'll never forget the look on my mom's face. The way the color had seemed to immediately drain from it, as she'd stood with the phone pressed firmly against one ear, listening wide-eyed as Mallory's mom had shrieked down the line. They'd found Mallory's body that morning. I later learned, while details of exactly what had happened to her were scarce. Rumor has it, when they'd found her, whoever killed her had gone ahead and removed all of her teeth. If you believed some, and many do, this happened before she died. But, of course, that could just be small-town talk. Either way, it had shaken the community up pretty bad. Before things slowly but surely returned to normal, the way they always seemed to in the face of local tragedy. We walked for a while more, Blake and I shooting the crap a little longer, before finally saying our goodbyes, and then suddenly, it was just me. I walked with my head down and my shoulders raised, suspiciously eyeing each row of corn I passed. Just on the off chance that there should be some lunatic with a tooth craze crouched there, pliers in hand. I'd sobered up long ago by this point, and though it was still June, a cold wind had begun to blow in, and I had the feeling rain wouldn't be far off. Sure enough, by the time I finally got to the bus stop 10 minutes later, a fine drizzle had begun. I huddled under the bus stop's meager roof, staring at the rain as it passed under the streetlight above. The light making each drop seemed to glow. I've always thought there's something relaxing about watching the rain. I was still staring at the streetlight when I noticed movement in the corn several yards down the road from me. Curious, but not yet alarmed, I leaned forward, squinting against the rain, expecting a cat, maybe, or a raccoon. A man was standing in the corn. I jerked and let out a surprised gasp. He must have been 20 or 30 yards away, a tall, broad figure partially hidden by corn. At this distance he was a little more than a silhouette, but there was just enough light for me to make out what looked like a thick wool sweater and a large, oversized construction boots. Startled, I immediately snapped my gaze away. All of a sudden, it felt important that I not let him know I had seen him. Though, I couldn't have said exactly why this was the case. Intuition, perhaps. Is he just standing in the corn? What the heck? Not sure what to do. I turned and fixed my gaze on the road to my left, acting like I was looking for the bus. Where the heck was the bus? Before the compulsion became too great, and I looked back again. The man was closer now. Much closer. A little more than a dozen yards. I hadn't even heard him move. What was more, now that he was nearer, I found I could make out more of his features. Long, pale face, big, crooked nose, and teeth. Rows of them, yellow and jagged, each one protruding out from his gums like corn kernels. I reached for my phone, figuring maybe Reese could still be nearby. My body acting as if on autopilot. No signal, of course. I looked back again. The man was right across the street now, standing just outside the edge of the corn, facing me, head on. The rain fell in sheets between us, but I could still see that grin. All those teeth, jutting out of his gums like compound fractures. And those eyes staring right at me, into my very soul. And I knew that whoever this guy was, he was absolutely, unequivocally, insane. I went very still, as a brief fight or flight struggle ensued in my mind. I was just steeling myself to run when suddenly a pair of headlights crested the hill to my left. A hydraulic hiss followed shortly after, as the bus rolled to a stop right in front of me. I didn't wait around. I threw myself at the doors and clambered aboard, inciting a curious glance from the driver, who grunted but said nothing as I quickly made my way to the back. A heartbeat later, and we were rolling. I stole frantic glances out of the window as we pulled away, but alas, my yellow-toothed stalker was nowhere to be seen. I collapsed back into my seat, wet and suddenly exhausted, in the new safety of the bus. I began to question whether I had really just seen what I thought I had. Who the heck hangs out of a cornfield in the middle of the dang night anyway? I let out a short laugh as the obvious suddenly dawned. No, stupid. Not a man. It was a scarecrow. You're in a cornfield. That's what you saw. Feeling reassured, I slumped down further in my seat, listening to the pattern of rain as the bus continued to rumble along. We passed one stop, two. I was just starting to relax again when all of a sudden the doors flapped open and I sucked in a breath. No way. I watched in mute horror as the man from the corn slowly stepped onto the bus. In the new lighting, I could see my initial impressions of the guy had been way off. He wasn't just tall, he was gigantic. So tall, in fact, he had to stoop a little to stop from banging his head on the bus's ceiling. Thin strands of raven black hair hung from his mostly bald scalp, framing a pale face and two piercing blue eyes, so wide the whites showed all around the iris. As if hearing my thoughts, he suddenly turned his head towards me, his eyes finding mine, and he grinned, once more affording me a perfect view of his awful kernel teeth. All the air left my body. There was no way he could have made it here in time to catch the bus. Even if the guy had run at full sprint, there was just no way. His boots slapped wetly against the vinyl floor as he made his way down the aisle towards where I sat. I looked around for help, but of course there was no one. Probably wouldn't have mattered even if there was. There are no good Samaritans on public transport. I heard the seat groan in protest as he slowly lowered himself down next to me. He didn't speak, didn't move, just sat there, staring straight ahead, still smiling that awful smile. The smell hit me a second later. A smell like copper and pond water, and something worse, like something that had once been alive and wasn't anymore. And it was all I could do not to throw up all over myself right then and there. I stared straight ahead, frozen, as the bus hissed and pulled away once again, realizing with sudden dawning horror that I was now trapped. Probably, there had been a time I could have escaped, but that was over now. Did you know your teeth are the only part of your body that can't heal themselves? His voice, when he spoke, was impossibly low, as if summoned from somewhere very deep, but ragged too, like bones being dragged over concrete. It was the sound of glass breaking, children choking, just the worst sound I had ever heard. What? A person has 32 adult teeth, he continued, unless they lose some, or take extras. They're also the only part of the human body that won't rot away. Think about it. Every part of you, gone, except for your teeth. He turned his head to look at me, and I was unsurprised to find he was grinning again. I see you, and you see me. We see each other. That makes us friends, and friends share everything, even their secrets. He leaned in close. Can I tell you a secret? I opened my mouth to say no thanks, or I really have to go, or literally anything. The man reached into his pocket and held out his hand. Lying on his palm were a fistful of human teeth. There were molars and incisors and others I didn't know the name for, their long roots speckled in bright blood, fresh blood. I gripped the seat in front as the world suddenly grayed around me. I was going to die, I realized. I was going to die. And just like Mallory, my teeth would be plucked one by one from my head, like petals off a daisy, until all that remained was my blood-streaked, gaping maw, fixed in its eternal death scream. They would find my body on the side of the road, several days from now, mangled and mutilated, just as Mallory's had been. Picked at by whatever carrion roamed nearby, or maybe not. Maybe instead, I would be dragged into the field and left for the corn to consume me, eating me little by little until nothing remained of my existence but a vague sense that something bad had happened here, and to stay away. Would my parents ever find out what happened to me? My friends, would they come looking? And if so, would they like what they found? Would there even be enough left to identify my body? They're also the only part of the human body that won't rot away. Think about it. Every part of you gone, except for your teeth. I kicked him. I didn't mean to. It happened on instinct, my body acting of its own accord, as it fought to save itself. To this day, I'm not sure how I even managed it, given the tight angle. All I know is this one moment I was sitting there, staring up into his sweet baby blue eyes. The next, my foot was shooting up and out, while the rest of me swiveled sideways in a maneuver I would never be able to pull off in any other circumstance. I don't know if I was necessarily aiming for his hand. The teeth went flying high up into the air, scattering in every direction before raining down like some confetti. Immediately the man let out a wail and dove after them, causing the bus driver to slam on the brakes. He snapped his head back to glare at us. The heck is going on back there? I didn't wait around to find out what happened next. I threw myself over the seat and crashed through the bus's folding accordion doors, punching through them like a fist through a wet paper bag, but not before casting one last glance back at the man. He was still on his knees, hands frantically pawing at the floor as he searched for his missing teeth. Even over the rain and the rumble of the bus's engine, I found I could still hear his voice. 1 tooth, 2 teeth, 3 teeth, 4 teeth. Ha ha! I turned on the spot and ran for my life. I got back home 5 minutes later. I had run the entire way, unsure whether the man with the yellow teeth had followed me, but not wanting to take the risk, my entire body slick with a combination of rain and sweat. My parents came down almost immediately, no doubt on account of all the screaming. My dad had looked especially pissed, right up until he'd seen the look on my face, and then I guess he must have realized that whatever was going on with me was serious, because a few minutes later he was on the phone with the police. The police arrived 20 minutes later, when I was hit with a barrage of questions, giving a description of the guy wasn't hard. When I mentioned the guy's teeth, however, the two policemen had a shared look, and then a few minutes later, there were more cops in my kitchen asking questions, their boots tracking muddy half-moons on the carpet. I tried to be as accurate as I could, but really, whenever I tried to recall anything about the man's appearance, all my mind would bring up was those awful yellow teeth. They found Reese's body the very next morning. His jaw had been entirely removed, and every tooth had been ripped clean out. None of his teeth were ever found, but of course, I know what happened to them. And in the quiet moments between therapy sessions, I can still hear the man with the yellow teeth counting. 1 tooth, 2 teeth, 3. The end. Wow, that was a really good story. Good job, writer, person. That was amazing. I think it did a really good job of describing things. I think it did a really good job of painting those visual images. I really could imagine the guy very well, and I hope to translate that through to the thumbnail. I think that this kid is actually super smart, and his brain being able to just kick it into overdrive and produce that absolutely fantastic idea is awesome. While I was reading it, I was thinking, man, how is this kid going to get out of here? Or is he going to get out of here? Or is this just kind of a ghost writing the story? But now thinking about it, how that man must, cherish his prized teeth, what a smart idea it was to kind of scatter him on the ground and have him dive to look for him. That is, in my opinion, basically the only thing that could have been in that situation. So I don't know that there's anything different that could have been done in this story. Maybe, just maybe, don't go home alone at night, right? Don't walk home alone at night. That's just kind of not the smartest idea. I live in a big neighborhood. It's not quite in the middle of nowhere with cornfields everywhere, but it is really close to the desert, and my house backs up to the desert. So if you go out my front door, you could probably walk for 10 or 20 miles and not really see anybody. Just have it be desert. So there has been a few times when I've walked home alone at night, and it gets to you really, really quickly. I don't know that I could make it, 20 minutes from a friend's house, because 5 minutes of walking was enough for me to start losing it and just start sprinting until I was in the door. And then collapse on the ground, just breathing super hard. With that being said, I think that the person that we can learn from a lot in this story is not the protagonist, but the antagonist. I think we definitely don't pull people's teeth out, that's for sure. But I think something that can be learned is the thing we're going for in life our weakness? Or is it our strength? I think oftentimes we prioritize the outcome, and we don't kind of think about the justification or the means by which to obtain the ends. I know that in my life it's definitely been easy to just keep pushing, just keep going, trying to hit that end, and not really care about anything in between. But at the end of the day, that is what makes us weak. That is, the whole point of doing things, right, is to learn along the way. You don't become Mr. Olympia for, the trophy at the end or the medal. You do it, and the byproduct is also that you learn discipline, and you learn how to eat right, and you learn how to work out really well, and you learn how to create your body into the greatest thing ever, right? I think oftentimes we get so tunnel visioned by the ends that we don't even realize what the means are doing for us in our lives daily. So with that, I'd love to invite you all to ask yourselves, what are you going for in your life? What is your goal? How are you working to achieve it? And is that means a weakness or a strength? And with that, thank you all so much for watching. I love you all. Today's story is entitled, My Buddies and I Had a Great Hike. We were 5, but I kept hearing a 6th man walking pattern. And it was posted to the r/NoSleep subreddit by Sal Demand. And it starts like this. Hi guys. This might be my first and only submission. Please be kind to me, I'm just a baby. This happened a few years ago, back when we were still in high school. I don't know if someone has experienced this before, but given a choice between having a member of your hiking group missing, or there's someone new that you couldn't account for, I'll always pick the missing guy scenario since there's somehow a logical explanation. And if acted quickly, the resolution would be a funny anecdote about some klutz lagging or way ahead and took a wrong turn. That wasn't what happened that day. For context, back in my high school days, our school had this great Boy Scout program that offers academic incentives for participation. As a teenager who couldn't care about Isaac Newton's 3 laws, it sounded great. Perfect, even. I get to barely pass while just planting some seedlings on areas that could use it. It was a win for us boys that couldn't bother to comprehend Shakespeare, and for the local environment, too. After a few years on that program, we found ourselves in leadership roles, and burdened with tasks of training the juniors, the occasional paperwork, and documentation for our projects. One of these project areas where we conducted tree planting before was in a mountainous area that needed at least a 2-hour hike to get through. It's not perilous where mud sinks through the soles of your shoes and the occasional slip happens. It was mostly gravel roads and neglected asphalt roads that were meant to bolster tourism in the area. Amongst the 5 senior scouts, 2 were on camera duty to take pictures of the status of the seedlings. I was on supplies, snacks, lunch, the mat where we would have lunch, a jug of water, the troop leader. He brought the other jug of water and Bluetooth speaker, and Mr. Medic, the guy who was most qualified to do first aid in case something goes wrong. In hindsight, 5 teenagers in the mountains alone, without an adult or teacher, was just a lawsuit waiting to happen, but we can't really have it that since it was on a Sunday and the deadline for the documentation requested by the local environment agency was drawing near. So, the day had come. We all loaded up in one troop leader's dad's pickup truck as far as troop leader's dad can take us to drop us off at the end of the more safer and steady parts of the gravel path. The day went, and we took some pictures of the fledgling trees, scavenged the area around to find suitable replacements for worn-down tree guards. Note which ones failed based on the planted plots, where they were located from years ago. Had friendly banter about crushes, and making fun of some of the school faculty, exaggerating their quirks to what was a hilarious degree. We did finish the job at around 3 p.m., a bit longer than expected, mostly due to the long lunch break we gave ourselves. After tidying up the area, it was very prudent for us to go back down before things get dark. We had flashlights, but nothing beats the big one on the sky in terms of providing a light source on the trail. Halfway through the gravel trail, something was off with the group. I noticed that the merry band of 5 was suddenly silent. It couldn't be helped since we had a long day of doing what is technically manual labor on the field, so everyone was just saving up their energy, especially since tomorrow would be a Monday too. But something was off with their silence. I couldn't pick it up. Why? And before I had to ask, what happened, guys? Why so quiet? I picked up something off. I was told my whole life that I might be on the autism spectrum, to put it kindly, but if it gave me a quirk, it would be that I can tell which objects are making sounds. I don't want to sound like I'm being unique, but a few years on weekend trails gave me this quirk that I can count pairs of footsteps walking, especially on loud surfaces like gravel. It was a handy quirk in making sure that my patrol is in line when I'm leading in the front for sure. Something was off in that moment. If Mr. Troop Leader's Bluetooth speaker hadn't run out of juice, I couldn't have picked up on our cadence, the rhythm we subconsciously made while marching downhill. Out of habit, I counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. At this point, one of the camera guys should have pointed out that our cadence is sort of off too, since he and I share that quirk, and he's the more outspoken one between the two of us, and yet he was quiet, eyes downcast on the road, as if he's looking out for trip hazards. In our line formation, they went like this, from front to rear. Camera guy 1, he who shared my quirk with me, followed by troop leader and camera guy 2, walking side by side as an effect on the conversation they had earlier, followed by me with Mr. Medic at the rear. At first, I was annoyed that the cadence was off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I wanted to say something, but something in my gut tells me not to say something for now. I understand everyone just had a long day, and so did I, so I just let out a quiet and deep sigh and carried on the trail. When we got to the asphalt road leading to town, I noticed that the cadence had appeared to be normal. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I, for one, was somehow relieved that was no longer slightly peeved by this and carried on till we could hitch a ride on a farmer's truck heading to town for some supplies. It was mostly a quiet ride until camera guy number 2 commented something along the lines of, "Was it me, or did the gravel smell like dead rat?" Troop leader chimed in with something like, "Probably a dead dog somewhere in the shrubs." Mr. Medic couldn't help but call out their BS, since all he had felt was just some strong chills from the wind, but there was hardly any wind in the trail. I called out everyone's BS and chimed with my eyes locked onto camera guy number 2, who was horizontally blessed, effectively saying he was marching for 2. Camera guy number 1, who was no longer shaken, backed me up, saying essentially that we were basically 6 people on that trail. We then proceeded to banter, even involving our mothers at one point, and yet the kind farmer who gave us a ride was noticeably chuckling along. He was then the one who suggested that maybe we were followed by a spirit of sorts. The truck was dead silent for a short while. I can tell that my eyes went wide as I proceeded to take a look at the other guys' faces to validate the kind farmer's hypothesis. In the back of my mind, it made sense in a way, like how we experience different phenomena, and there was hardly any other explanation, aside from maybe the food had a little something that the cooks didn't bother to tell us. Eventually, the kind farmer dropped us off to the town center before proceeding to go to a hardware store for his supplies. We got out on our own for our homes and just chucked it off as a quirky story we'd tell our other friends, parents, teachers, and juniors. I was advised that it was just typical since we were baked by the sun for a few hours. Maybe our brains just overheated that day. I really didn't mind about it. For me, it was just a funny, supernatural story I soon will tell my kids or nieces and nephews. I write this now because I couldn't believe it took me so long to put the pieces together. This is how lately I've been losing sleep. A few years ago, or, to put it correctly, a few years after that bizarre tale, some construction guy who was doing some cleaning along the bushes of the gravel road to make way for a new asphalt road found human remains on what is speculated to be that of a child. Didn't think much about it when the news came out. It was viral in our town for a week, and life went on. That was until a few months ago, when forensic analysis confirmed that it belonged to a child missing for a long time that was assumed dead. He had been missing since around that time when we had that little Sunday Boy Scout documentation activity. It could have been him trying to find his way back home then. I'm so sorry, buddy, we didn't know. We didn't know any better. The end. That was definitely an interesting twist at the end. There's a lot going on there. Could it have been that the boy had died previously, and that was what the smell was? So the ghost of the boy was trying to make it back. Because I know a lot of times, especially in media, when there is a ghost, the ghost doesn't know they're a ghost, right? So maybe it was so important to the boy that he got home that was kind of like his unfinished business. And so maybe it was a ghost following them. Maybe it was like a Wendigo and the boy had kind of transformed into a Wendigo of sorts or something like that. Or been gotten by one. And then it was a Wendigo kind of following them. Or the boy was alive, or just barely alive, trying to follow the sound of them to get out. And then, before making it to the end, died. There's a lot of speculation that can be done on what really did happen in this story. I personally think that if it were to be a spirit instead of a Wendigo, that would be much better. I know spirits are kind of scary, right? But I feel like spirits are more scary when you're stuck in a house. if you've ever seen like The Conjuring or things like that, if you know you're living in a haunted house, spirits are really scary. But I don't know of a whole lot of stories of a spirit that's super effective at what it does in haunting an entire forest and in the daytime. So if it were my choice and I got to pick, I had to walk through the forest with all my buddies in the daytime, of course, like the story. And we were going to be running from either a spirit or a Wendigo. I'm picking the spirit. So I like that it kind of points towards supernatural, because although all of those options were in a way supernatural, that almost kind of gives a piece to it, thinking that maybe they were helping the spirit to finish its business and then it could move on. I like that. I like to think of that as a little happy ending in there. If not, then maybe it was a critter or something that was chasing them and the boy was already dead. But that's up to you. What do you think happened in this story? What do you think is the true ending? What did you take from this story to learn to be a better person? After all, that's the goal of my channel, is to try and take these stories and see what we can do to be better people. I think something that's definitely applicable is we have the eyes we have and we have the ears we have for a reason. And we're put around the people we're put around for a reason as well. So I think if we see things like this, if we notice patterns like this, and it keeps sticking out again and again and again and again, that we need to say something about it, just do it. You know, what's the worst that could happen, right? Everybody's just like, that's dumb, and then you move on. But at least now, you don't have to look back like this main character and wonder what if, and have regret. So basically, the moral I take from this is be assertive with the things that stand out to you, because there's a reason they're standing out to you. And if it really was a Wendigo or something, that could have saved their lives. Once again, I'm Cece. I love you all. Today's story is entitled, There's a Man That Lives in the Corner of My Eye. And it was posted to the r/NoSleep subreddit by It's Me KB. And it starts like this. You know what I'm talking about, right? You're in the middle of work or doing something fun, and you get the strange feeling you're being watched, only to turn and see maybe a mere glimpse of a shadow of something before it disappears into the deepest nooks of your cornea. Yeah, in my case, there's a man. Well, I can't actually prove there's a man, but I know he's there, watching me from where I can't see. It's like I can sense him watching me, like when I'm alone. I'm not really alone. It all started maybe a month ago. I work in a school as a night shift janitor, usually from 2 p.m. to 12 a.m. Not the best job in the world, but hey, somebody's got to do it. It's not a hard job, it's basically what you'd expect. Cleaning off desks, sweeping up dust, and mopping up any poor kid's regurgitated lunch. Like I said, not the best job. Anyways, it wasn't a particularly exciting night to say the least. I just did what I normally did on every other day I had work. I'd usually get up around noon after sleeping in for so long because of all the gaming I did the night before. Then, I'd make myself breakfast. Well, I guess it would technically be lunch. Doesn't matter. I'd make myself cereal and coffee regardless. After that, I'd get dressed in my work clothes, which is usually something I wouldn't mind getting dirty. After that, it's about a long and painstaking 40-minute drive to the high school. I won't say the high school's real name for the sake of privacy, but let's just call it Hillcrest High School. Before I continue, let me describe to you what type of school Hillcrest is, so that you know what I deal with every day. You see, Hillcrest isn't one of those normal suburban schools you find lying off the side of some random highway in a populated area that has a grand football field behind it, packed with life every Friday night. It's an old, quiet, poor, run-down school that doesn't even have a football field or football team, for that matter. And when I say old, I mean it's as old as crap, like built in the 1850s and placed in the middle of nowhere by an idiotic politician in charge of education. And trust me, it shows. Wonder why it takes me so long to get to work? Because there's no main highway that leads to it, just a beaten-down gravel road that stretches on for miles. The outside, a foundation that consists of nothing but crumbling red bricks used to replace the molding lumber underneath, smothered in decaying concrete. resting in a large open field that spans 1 or 2 long grassy, weed-filled and insect-infested miles. The inside. The hallways filled with scuffed yellow, used to be white, tiles, and thin paper drywall walls that make up every room. The dim white lights that flicker from time to time, which means I'll have to replace them soon, wrap up the whole vibe and give the school a nice, eerie, unsettling feeling as soon as you step foot into the building. Only about 100 or 200 people attend Hillcrest because really that's the max capacity the school has space for. It's not big in the slightest, and I'm still surprised that it's open. But I'm not complaining. The fewer kids, the easier my job is. I'd arrived at Hillcrest High School at around 2:30 that day. I remember the time clearly because I kept cursing myself for being late. I hurriedly jumped out of my car and headed inside to clock myself in. I couldn't really afford to be a second later. I was never the best at showing up on time, but today I showed up a lot later than normal. I don't know what it was, but I just didn't want to be there. As I reached the entrance to Hillcrest, I put my hands on the dead, cold handle of the steel door in front of me, the metallic surface stealing every ounce of warmth in my body. Swinging open the door, a gust of even colder, ventilated air hit my body, making every hair stand up on its tippy toes. I took a deep breath before walking down the crooked halls and into the break room that looked like it was held together by a couple of glue sticks and hope. A familiar ding sounded off as I used my punch card. I told you the school was old to clock in. Since the school was so small, it was relatively easy for one person to manage by themselves, so there was only one daytime janitor and one nighttime janitor. At this point, it should only be me in the building by myself. It should have been, anyways. Now, I don't remember the exact way these events went down, so I'll break it down the best I can. 3 p.m. There are only 3 hallways in Hillcrest High School. 1 hallway for freshmen and sophomores, 1 hallway for juniors and seniors, and finally 1 hallway for elective classes. You know, stuff like band and choir. You get the gist. I would normally start with the freshman and sophomore hallway and kind of work my way around to the others after. First, I'd wipe down all furniture in each classroom. Then, I'd go back around and dust and mop all the rooms. Then, spot mop any mess that was left behind by the kids, before finally taking out all the trash and leaving for the night. Easy, but definitely time-consuming. 5 p.m. Almost finished with the freshman-sophomore hallway now. It took about 2 hours, but I finally did it. Unfortunately for me, the freshmen/sophomores today decided to be unusually messy, throwing anything they could find on the floors, which is why it took me so long to clean up. They don't normally do that. You wouldn't expect a freshman/sophomore in high school to act like a 5th grader, but sure enough, it happens. Pencils, folders, books, and even things from the teachers' desks were thrown on the floor, like it was done specifically to spite me. It's never this bad. I even know the teachers of this hallway, and they're super friendly, even picking up students' things off the floor before I even get to do it to help me out. So why was it so bad today? I shrugged it off, trying to just ignore the strange occurrence. But in the back of my mind, a feeling of unease started to make itself comfortable. Better get back to cleaning so I can finish on time. 7 p.m. Almost done with the junior/senior hallway. Nothing strange to report there. In fact, there was barely anything to clean up at all, so I guess the freshman/sophomore was really just messy after all. I was pretty disappointed in the disrespectful way the teachers let their kids trash their rooms today. I get it's my job to clean up messes, but they shouldn't intentionally leave one. It's just so rude, you know? It pisses me off. Anyways, I only have 1 room left in the junior/senior hallway. But I'll be sure to have a little chat with the teachers in the morning. 7:24 p.m. The sun is starting to set on the horizon, disappearing with a yellow and orange glow. While taking out the trash of the last room in the junior/senior hallway, I suddenly heard a loud bang, coming from the other side of the school, in the hallway where the electives are held. Now don't get me wrong, this scared the absolute crap out of me. It made my stomach drop about 6 feet below. But I wasn't exactly surprised either. Being the old school that Hillcrest is, there are many cracks and crevices for animals of many kinds like birds, rats, raccoons, and even cats. to try and sneak their way in, and wreak havoc on anything they could find. I remember a particular time where the biggest animal I've ever found in the school, a large dog, was jumping around in a classroom, tearing up colored paper while managing to flip over multiple desks. It took a while for me to get him out, and even longer to clean up the mess he made, but eventually I did. I took a deep sigh of annoyance, knowing that whatever animal got in this time, I would have to get out again, and hopefully not contract rabies. I loosened my shoulders and hung my head as I slowly dragged myself to the final hallway of the night where the animal was. I truly don't get paid enough for this. 8:32 p.m. At this point, it's completely dark outside, and I've checked every single room in the elective hallway for any sign of animals, without luck, except for the band room. As I stand outside, looking at its large steel doors covered in colorful sheet paper spelling out band, with a little drawn tuba on the side, I gulp nervously, bracing myself for any type of creature to be behind these doors. I reach out for the handle, twisting the knobs and opening the large steel doors that give out a drawn-out shriek due to their rusty hinges. I then flicked on the light switch, waiting for the delayed lights to flicker on with the same white hue that every other classroom has. Just 3.5 more hours. Just gotta make it to 12, I said, taking slow, cautious steps into the band room. You see, the way the band room is set up like this, it's an extremely large room, probably the biggest in the entire school. It has gray, cracking concrete floors and very tall, thin, white walls that reach towards the sky covered in soundproofing barriers. Across the dirty concrete floor rest a bunch of black desk chairs for students to sit in, as well as black music sheet stands sitting right in front of them. The music room is so big, it also has narrow, small, carpeted stairs that lead up to a balcony with several small noise-canceling rooms in the back for students' private practices. The rooms upstairs are no bigger than a closet and can only really hold one student at a time. But with 3 of those types of rooms up there, multiple students are able to practice at once, although it's nothing special. It's probably where most of the funding went when the building of the school occurred. As I took steps deeper into the band room, I noticed a large beige filing cabinet that had been tipped over on its side and was now resting in the middle of the floor, knocking over several chairs and stands on its way down. Great. It must have been a pretty big animal then. I walk over to it and try to lift the filing cabinet back up, pulling at it with all my strength as I let out several grunts of struggle. Then, I stop trying to lift it as a sudden, shocking realization hits me. Wait a minute. There's no way an animal could knock this thing over. Even if it was big, this thing weighs over 200 pounds. A human could barely move this thing. How the heck did it fall over? My eyes then quickly survey the surrounding area and managed to wander up to the balcony. What I saw next made my soul nearly leap to heck for how scared I was. I only saw it for a split second before it disappeared from my sight, but I swear I saw 2 large, thin, shadowy legs disappear around the corner of one of the doors of the small open rooms upstairs on the balcony. Holy crap, I said to myself, frozen in fear. Great, so there's a squatter in the school, and he's hiding upstairs. What should I do? Should I call the police? It's the most logical option, but there's no way they'll make it in here in time. At this time of night, in the middle of nowhere, this guy will be gone by the time they're even halfway here. Should I just run? No, I can't. The school would definitely fire me for not doing my job and maintaining it at night. Great. More crap to handle. And by myself, too. Although I didn't want to, I somehow scraped enough courage into my soul to start walking towards those stairs. Every step I took made the wooden carpeted steps creak. One step, then another. Creak, 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 until finally I reached the top, facing 3 smaller steel doors, all completely pitch black on the inside. I take a look at my watch and it reads 10:02 p.m. Okay, game plan here. Kick the guy out, then finish the rest of my shift in peace, and let the school know about the incident in the morning. All I need to do is confront the man behind one of these doors, and hopefully he'll leave without a fight. Just please be a harmless homeless person looking for shelter and not some deranged lunatic wanting to kill me. I decided to open up the first door on the left. As I place my now shaking hand on the knob of the first door, my whole body shudders. I'll do it quickly. On 3. 1, 2, 3. I slam open the first door so hard it makes the walls shake. I quickly flip on the light switch, fully preparing myself to see someone there. But there isn't anyone there. Just a black chair and a music sheet stand, as there should be. Which means the man is in one of the other two doors. I shut off the light and close the door of the first door, while mentally bracing myself to open the second door. My heart was racing at this point. It's a 50-50 shot that he's either in this one or the other one. I braced myself against trying to put on the most authoritative and intimidating face I can, preparing myself to yell my lungs out at some poor homeless fool that wandered his way inside on 3, just like last time. 1, 2, 3. I slam the door open and flip on the lights as fast as possible, with a fierce look in my eyes, only to see no one again. I found no one, which means I now know which door this guy is hiding behind. Part of me was glad that I haven't been able to find anyone yet, because who really wants to come face to face with someone crazy enough to break into a school at 10 o'clock at night? But the other part of me was annoyed and fed up and wanted this guy out of here as soon as possible. You know what? Screw it. It's late. I'm getting this over with. I rush up to the final door on the right and bash into it with my fist. Hey, whoever's in here needs to get out right now or I'm calling the police, I scream, trying to put on the most masculine voice I can. No response. Crap. I really am going to have to take this guy out by force. On 3 then. 1, 2. I stop, hesitating for a moment. 3. I burst open the door, already swinging my fist around like a madman, not even bothering to turn the lights on. I then trip and fall over something, before swiftly tasting the floor. I lay there for a moment, in pain, before jumping up and flipping the switch. Wait, no one. No, that can't be. There was someone up here. But no, I know what I saw. There has to be someone up here. Could it really be my imagination? I stood in front of the third door, facing the inside with absolute confusion. Then I heard a cough. It was subtle and not very loud at all, but the room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop, so it was pretty easy to figure out where the cough came from. Right behind me, I turn with the speed of lightning, so fast my eyes don't even adjust, only to see no one. Seriously? No one. Am I going crazy? Insane? Or is the night shift finally catching up to me after all these years? Whatever it was, something strange was going on, and I was not going to be a part of it. I quickly turned off the lights and made sure all 3 doors were shut, then rushed down the stairs as fast as I could, without tripping. I then ran out of the band room, slamming the large metallic doors behind me. Wait. Crap. I completely forgot my cleaning supplies in there. Sure, I could just leave them, but without them I wouldn't be able to finish cleaning the rest of the rooms. How am I going to explain why I didn't finish my job to a bunch of angry teachers whose rooms weren't cleaned? What? Say that I maybe saw something and was too scared to finish, and I would easily get fired on the spot. I decided against my best judgment to go back and at least retrieve my cleaning supplies. Then in the morning explain to the band teacher what happened to the filing cabinet. As I headed back in, a gut-wrenching feeling hit me. Every voice in my head screamed at me to turn around, but I continued regardless. As I turned the corner to face the large open band room once more, I noticed all my cleaning supplies somehow neatly stacked on top of the filing cabinet lying in the center of the room. I speed-walked over to it, trying to leave as soon as possible, but as soon as I went to pick everything up, I felt it, like someone was staring right at me, and then I noticed who it was. I dared not to turn my head toward it, but up on the balcony, I could see it out of the corner of my eye. A large, thin, shadowy man, with long, unnatural appendages and a twisted figure. The man was easily over 6 feet tall, but hung his head low and to the side, just staring down at me. I couldn't see every detail since I could only see him through my peripheral vision, so I couldn't make out any facial features or human-like appearances, if he even had any. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't human. But it was trying to be. I couldn't move, frozen in fear of the thought that any second this creature, this oddly shaped man, would sprint down to me and swallow me whole. I closed my eyes, praying that when I opened them it would disappear. That it was all really just in my head, and that I was just really tired. Whatever the case, real or not, I had to make a decision to move. On 3, I would open my eyes and look at that thing, then run to my car as fast as my legs would carry me. On 3 then. 1. My heart began to race, its tantalizing, rhythmic beat filling my eardrums. 2. I began to sweat drastically, pools of it forming at the base of my feet. Please don't be real, please don't be real, please don't be real. 3. I opened my eyes and twisted my head towards that gong so quickly that I almost gave myself whiplash. As I opened my eyes in its direction, I then saw nothing. I let out a nervous laugh of relief, just staring at the spot where the man once was. So I am just losing it after all. For moments, I just stood there in disbelief that the man actually wasn't there. Then I felt something on my shoulder, a hand. I could see it in the corner of my eye. Oh crap, a hand is on my shoulder. A large hand, black as night, with different sized fingers and long sharp nails. The hand felt rugged and heavy, almost making me tip over. Crap, crap, crap. That thing is standing right behind me, and worst of all, it's actually real. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? I need to run now. I need to run. I fried my head as my flight or fight instincts kicked in, although as soon as I threw the punch, it connected with nothing but the air, because as soon as I turned my head all the way around, nothing was behind me. I couldn't miss this chance. I ran straight out of the band room, forgetting all of my cleaning supplies. As I ran, I only looked straight back to make sure the man wasn't chasing me. I needed to get wham! My head burst against the blue rusted lockers that sit on the other side of the hallway parallel to the band room doors. I fell to the floor with a large crash. As I held my head in my pain, my instincts kicked back in again, and I got back up to run. I ran down the crooked hallways, my shoes squeaking across the scuffled tile floors. This time I kept my head straight forward to see where I was going, only looking back occasionally. I looked back expecting the man to chase me, but as soon as I looked back, nothing was there. I let out more crazed laughter as I sprinted towards the nearest exit. I looked back again instinctively, barely turning my head over my shoulders. This time I wasn't so lucky. Out of the corner of my eye, there was the man, large, twisted, and terrifying, sprinting at me on all fours like some rabid animal. It let out an ear-piercing scream that was so high-pitched and loud it shattered the dusty trophy case as I sprinted past. The glass flew out from the case into the hall. I lost it, screaming in absolute fear. I ran as fast as I ever had. Warm teardrops fell down my face as I started to hyperventilate. Then I started to slow down. No. My stupid body had reached its limits. I guess that's what not working out for years gets you. I then tripped up on my own feet and fell face first into the hard, cold tile floors. At this point, I was so tired and out of breath. I had just accepted my fate. I lay there waiting for the creature to devour me or do whatever it was going to do. But it never did. I'd been lying there for multiple minutes, definitely enough time for the man to catch up to me, but he never attacked me. I got back up on my feet and turned around, and again there was no one. Again, the man had seemingly disappeared out of thin air. Was he really real? No, he had to be. The glass in the trophy case was still shattered, lying out in the middle of the hallway floor. As I looked around frantically, I slowly took steps backwards towards the exit. Then, I backed up right into the wall. Wait, a wall? In the middle of the hallway? There couldn't be one. The exit was supposed to be right behind me, but there I was, my back to a wall. I reached my hand behind me without trying, feeling around the wall. It was stiff and rugged and warm and organic, and it wasn't a wall. It was the man. He was standing right behind me, and I had just backed up into him. As I stand there, frozen, my hand on the man, I could feel his warm breath brushing the hairs on the top of my head. He let out another ear-piercing screech, and I used both my hands to cover my ears as they started to slightly bleed. Some light bulbs shattered around us, making the atmosphere darker. As if it wasn't scary enough, the man wasn't attacking me. He was just standing behind me, almost as if he was taunting me. Like he was just out of my range of sight, and no matter how hard I tried to see him, I couldn't. Like he wanted me to be in constant fear of him. I slowly lowered my arms to my side. The exit. The exit is right behind me, and the man is only about 30 feet away. All I have to do is make it to the exit. I gathered up the rest of my remaining strength I barely had and closed my eyes. Then I turned towards the exit and opened my eyes. Of course, the man wasn't in front of me anymore. But I could still feel his heavy breath and relentless gaze on the back of my head. I took each step carefully, as to not make any sudden movements to invoke the man into attacking me. Every step I took, he took, like he was walking right on top of me. Slowly but surely I made it to the exit. I cautiously opened the metallic door and stepped outside. The cool night breeze brushed against my face. Then I sprinted as fast as I could to my car. I fumbled with the keys before finally unlocking my gray 2001 Kia Spectra. I hopped in, started the car, and hit the gas. My car's tires made a screeching sound much like the man's as I burst out of the school parking lot, leaving tire marks in my tracks. I had done it. I had successfully avoided the man and gotten away alive. I don't know what he wanted from me, if anything at all, but I didn't have to worry about that now. I'm calling in first thing tomorrow and quitting. I've had enough of this crap. The school lights that I had left on grew faint as I drove farther and farther away from it. The tension that had been overwhelming my soul had faded away, and relief washed over my body. I went to adjust my rearview mirror when something caught my eye. Then, in the corner of my eye, I had seen it. The man sitting in the backseat of my car. I screamed the loudest I had ever screamed before. The man screamed too. His scream shattered my windshield. I closed my eyes before hearing an even louder boom as everything went dark. The next thing I remembered from that night was the blinding lights of the hospital and the subtle beep of the vital monitor. Apparently I had crashed my car head-on into a tree. Thankfully, I didn't have any major injuries, just a few cuts and bruises. I was discharged about 2 days after the crash, doctors clearing my case as a mental breakdown, soon after I got a call from the school. I was fired for vandalism and failing to do my job. I'd have to pay for any broken or damaged property, too. I know I didn't cause any of the damages. I know it was the man, but to be honest, I was fine with that. I didn't want to work there anymore anyways. I let out a large sigh of relief as the sun hit my face, spreading its golden rays across my skin. The nightmare is finally over. Or, at least that's what I thought. I thought the man was somehow connected to the school, and that once I left, the man would disappear. But he didn't. He was always there. I could feel his gaze, feel his breath, and sense his presence. Every time I went to brush my teeth and looked in the mirror, I'd see a glance of him. Every time I'd rinse my hair in the shower and had to close my eyes, I knew he was watching. Every time I would go to sleep, he'd be there in the corner of my eye, at the end of my bed watching me. In my rearview mirror, in the back of my car seat, behind me everywhere I went, in the corner of my eye, he was there. I went to anyone who would listen. 3 therapists, 5 doctors, 2 psychologists. But every time, they would just come up with some excuse that I was crazy or schizophrenic or even just imagining the man. I don't know what the man is. I'm not sure if he is a curse. I'm not sure if he's a demon. And I'm really not sure why I'm the only one who can see him. But if there's one thing I am sure of, I'm sure the man is real. He has to be real. Because today was different. There was no man in the corner of my eye today. Only one standing right in front of me, staring right back at me. The end. That was an interesting story, that's for sure. I liked it a lot. I think this protagonist made some absolutely atrocious decisions, that's for sure. One being when it came to him being in the band room and just closing his eyes and then counting to 3 and opening them and running. That to me kind of is not the best way to preserve your life, right? If you know that there's a big dude in there who's at least as strong, to flip over the 200 plus pound filing cabinet and move it into the middle of the room, which, I mean, if you think logically, it probably didn't start in the middle of the room, right? It probably started up against a wall. So if it moved from there to the middle of the room and flipped over, he needs to be at least that strong. So if it's this giant lanky creature that looks freaky, and I know it's at least that strong, I'm not closing my eyes for nothing, right? You know, and again, right, when he was laying on the floor in the hallway, I don't know why he would do that. That's just not very smart to me. So, differences that we could have done here. For starters, don't close your eyes. Use it to your advantage. I feel like I would have realized earlier that the creature didn't want me to look directly at it. But let's say you didn't realize that. I feel like at least by the time it was time for him to, like when he backed up into the creature in the hall and he was close to the exit, that it was a thing that, you know, wanted to be in the corner of his eye but not in his real vision. I would try and start looking at him. I would try and start chasing him around and using that to maneuver myself. I would use that to look straight past him and keep him in the corner of my eye and get really close. And then ideally, if you could, you know, have a spear or a bat or a gun or something and try to get rid of it, right? I feel like, you know, if somebody, like if, let's say if it was a homeless person, right? You wouldn't want to just beat them, right? That'd be crazy, of course. You know, you'd have sympathy. But I feel like if it was like a supernatural creature or like a cryptid or something, like I feel like I really just wouldn't have any sympathy and I'd just start beating the crap out of it, you know? Maybe I'm just a little bit different and weird in that way, but I don't know, if some giant creature just started hanging out in the corner of my eye and started destroying stuff, I feel like it's for game, you know? At least in a self-preservation way. And if there's anything I've learned from watching the Nerd Explains videos on YouTube, you know, if there is a creature like that that is just so persistent, then, you know, make sure you go for a double tap, right? I think there's a great metaphor in this if we're kind of shifting towards what can we apply to ourselves in our daily lives, in our character to be better people. And that is, I think it's easy to get lost in our work. I think that in all jobs, there's things that we have to overlook. There's parts of ourselves that we kind of have to give up to have the job. Whether it be something that's shady, something that you just don't like, or maybe a boss that's just overworking you. Whatever it is, there's a part of every job that's just not ideal, right? And it's wrong. Now, I think, and I've read studies about how Gen Z tend to be a little bit better at this, about saying, you know what, this just isn't right. And not kind of beating themselves up for being too weak or something, but just saying, you know what, I deserve to be treated better. And that's not to say that other people don't deserve to be treated better. It's just that, according to studies that they've done, Gen Z are usually more vocal about that in a workplace environment. So with that being said, I think, again, with a lot of these stories, it comes down to, are the things you're doing a cause that you want to die for? And if not, should you be working as hard as you are at them? Are you working for an hourly type of deal, or are you working on this thing because it's a passion project? I think it's a good idea to keep our priorities straight and focus our energies where they should be. With that being said, I think that's a good thing to ponder. That's a good thing to think about. And I invite you all to think about that. Are you allocating your resources and time and energy where you should be? Are you happy? Are you fighting for a cause that you would die for, or can you even remember why you started this cause? Anyways, if you had any revelations, or if there's anything you would have done differently in this story, or if you would have agreed with me and maybe tried to fight the creature head on, please let me know down in the comments below. Again, I'm CC with the Crucible character, and if you made it this far in the video, I do really appreciate it. It means the world to me. And again, we're trying to hit 100 subscribers by the end of the year, and I really appreciate your help with that. Please, if you enjoy the videos, I don't have so many subscribers, and so the odds of you seeing these videos again, just randomly, is pretty low unless you subscribe. So please take a moment to consider that. It is free. I love you all. The title of today's story is, My Brother's Been Dead for 3 weeks, but he texted me tonight. Today's story was posted to the r/nosleep subreddit by Parasitic Infection. And here it goes. This situation is absurd. terrifying, and wholly impossible, but it's happening to me. And if possible, I have to tell someone. Anyone. This post might be the only way I can get out what's happening to me. 3 weeks. It was 3 weeks ago. My younger brother, Daniel, he died in a car crash. He wasn't in a vehicle, though. It was a drunk driver that caused the accident. The policeman identified him by the ID in his bag. We received the call at 6:20 in the evening. Everything that had been found in the backpack of a junior high school bag was present in his, everything except for his phone, which was odd. My mother was devastated, as was my father. I was upset too. The absence of another family member in the house cast a shadow over all of us, a dark, bleak shadow that we couldn't get rid of. When someone close passes away, you try to do everything in your power to preserve their memory. For me, it was texting him. I knew he wouldn't respond, but the fact that the messages went through meant something to me. I wouldn't get texts back, but it gave me a little bit of joy just to be able to text the number. What little happiness I got out of my ritual quickly turned to fear. Tonight, 3 weeks after Daniel's death, I got a text back. I miss you too. Where are you? It was in response to the last text I had sent him. I love you, Dan, and I miss you. That reply came in at 7:25. I didn't want to tell Mom or Dad. They wouldn't believe me. That, and they'd probably think it to be some cruel joke that I was playing. Look, Danny is messaging me back. Isn't it awesome? They'd hate it. I couldn't tell them. At 7:35, after much deliberation, I texted him back. 7:35. What? Is this a joke? Who are you? Why do you have Danny's phone? Why are you doing this? He, or whoever was using the phone, replied seconds after. 7:35. It's me. It's your brother Danny. I woke up a while ago. My leg hurts, so I can't walk too fast, but I'm making my way back home now. What the heck? I thought. How? As far as I knew, Danny was dead. That was a fact. So either this was a cruel joke from someone who had managed to get a hold of his phone, or something else was happening. I could only think about that comment regarding the leg. My leg hurts. My leg hurts. His leg hurts. His leg was pulverized in the accident. How would a person who had just taken his phone know that? Fingers trembling, I typed out another reply. 7:36. What do you mean you're making your way back home? What does that mean? Who are you? I got only one reply after that for the next hour or so. It was complete radio silence. 7:37. I'm your brother. I'm coming back to you guys. With no idea what to do, I just sat at my desk for the next hour and a half. I kept waiting for a knock at the door or a buzz from my phone, but the 90 minutes I spent in anticipation yielded nothing. That was until 9:07. 9:07. I'm getting close. It's hard to see in the dark, and this leg, it really hurts, but I'm keeping up. What did getting close mean? Was he in the neighborhood? Was he on our street? I deducted that asking specific questions didn't yield me anything helpful, but I asked anyways. It took me a couple of minutes to think of what to ask, but the words eventually came out. 9:09. What do you mean, you're getting closer? Where are you? His response frightened me. 9:10. I'm nearby, maybe. That alarmed me. What did nearby mean? I scrambled to get out of my room and made my way downstairs. Mom and Dad were usually in bed by 8:30 and asleep by 9, so I didn't need to worry about them questioning anything. We don't live in a big house, so locking all the doors and windows downstairs wasn't hard. I checked to see that the front door was locked. When I confirmed it was, I turned on the porch light from inside and set up a chair in the middle of the entrance hallway. Since I didn't know what to do at this point, I decided to wait it out. About half an hour later, things only got worse. I'm shaking as I write this because I think he's here, or maybe he isn't, but I think he's going to be here soon. I received another text at about 9:38. 9:38. I'm close, I think. I can't quite remember which house is mine. I think I'll look for the light. Fear shot through me like lightning. Our house couldn't have been the only one with lights on at this hour. I unceremoniously leapt out of my chair and slammed my hand into the light switch. I breathed out a sigh of relief. That relief was quickly short-lived, as I received one of two final texts from my brother. 9:39. I saw the lights go out in a house. I think it's mine. I'm going. I looked down at the words on my phone screen for a moment. No way, he couldn't possibly be referring to this house. I knew I was lying to myself. I went into the kitchen and grabbed one of our knives. I hadn't the slightest clue of what I might have to use it on, but it made me feel a bit safer. Just as I sat down, I felt the stomach-churning sensation of my phone vibrating in my pocket. The rapid, fearful beats of my heart made my chest ache. Hesitantly, I turned on the phone and looked at the most recent and final message I was sent. 9:40. I'm here. For the last 10 minutes, the other side of the door has been completely silent. At least, it was completely silent. As I type this out, knife in hand, I can hear something just outside. Someone is knocking on the door. It sounds like my brother, and he's only saying one thing. Let me in. I need help with my leg. Update 10:21. I'm going to open the door. I still have the knife. I'll try to update again if I make it out okay. The end. That was a good short little story. I think it definitely leaves a lot to the imagination of, if he didn't reply back again, does that mean that something got him, right? I think in this story, we have the protagonist, which is an older brother, of course, right? And then the younger brother who dies in a car accident. Now, I think it's kind of underrated that a common theme in ghost literature, whether it be movies or TV or stories, is that usually the people that turn into ghosts are those with unfinished business. That's of course. But those who the ghosts latch onto are usually those with a great amount of sorrow or even guilt about the situation. Now, I have no doubt that this older brother, let's say the younger brother's in junior high, so the older brother's probably in high school or even older than that, which means he can probably drive. And what that means is if the kid was, walking home, probably late at night if there's somebody drunk driving around, because odds are it probably wasn't at noon, right? Then I don't think it takes a master detective to deduce that the older brother probably feels guilt. So can you explain all of this away and say there's no ghosts and the older brother just feels a crazy amount of guilt? No. But I think it might be a slight confirmation bias in that the brain sees what it wants. I watched a video the other day explaining about how if you look up, is caffeine bad for you, you're going to find 101 sources that are perfectly legitimate that say that it is. And if you look up, is caffeine good for you, you're going to find 101 sources that are equally as legitimate saying that it's good for you. And the same is true for just about anything. You will find what you look for. You will get what you want. So, although not all of the things in our lives are consciously wanted, they do end up finding a way to us. And so I think if there is something, a common motive, or something that we can pull from this story and try to apply to our lives, it is that truly the past is the past, the future is the future. And we need to be willing to understand that truly, whether we accept it or not, and whether we know what we want or not, what we want is going to make its way to us, just like this. In the story, he wants nothing more than to see his brother again. He wants his brother to come back. And sure enough, the brother's coming back. Whether that be from grief or PTSD of some sort, or anxiety attacks, or anything like that, we will get what we want. So please, if there's anything that you apply from this story, I would say, take a minute to try and think, to try and understand, what do you want in this life? What do you want with the time you have? And are your actions or the things that are around you supporting you to move towards that thing? Or is there something that maybe even unconsciously you don't even know that you want more and you're moving towards that thing? I appreciate you all. If you made it this far in the video, please take a moment to consider subscribing. It is free. And again, we are trying to hit 100 subscribers by the end of the year. I appreciate all the love and support that you all have given me. What would you have done differently in this story? Would you have made sure to lock the doors before even going to bed and been a little bit smarter than this person in the story? How could you apply this to your life? How have you tried to apply anything from my videos? Please let me know in the comments down below. And again, I'm CC. I love you all. The title of today's story is, Have You Ever Had the Feeling That Someone is Watching You? And it was uploaded to the r/NoSleep subreddit by Accurate Reading 895. And it starts like this. Have you ever had the feeling that someone is watching you? I'm sure you have. It's an unsettling feeling. You know, there's something, or even worse, someone, that is, watching you. Not knowing what it might do to you or when. That's exactly what I'm feeling too. It all started on a Monday. I left work around 5:30 p.m. I wasn't feeling up to it. I wasn't in a very good mood. I was stressed from the heavy workload, so I decided to take a walk for a little while in the park that's 2 blocks from my house. Sometimes I like to walk for an hour to clear my head. It also serves as some exercise since I spend almost all day sitting in front of the computer. That routine has turned me into a sedentary, grumpy person with little energy. One of my office colleagues, Sean, whom I hardly ever talked to, was the one who had recommended that I established a walking routine at least 3 times a week after work. I don't know much about him. His desk is 2 rows behind mine, and he's been working there for 5 years, but I've always found him to be a strange guy. He rarely talks to anyone. During lunchtime, he's alone. He never joins in when we go play pool or to gatherings at one of our homes. It seems he takes that there are no friends at work thing very seriously. That's why I found it unusual that he came up to talk to me. Although there was something even weirder about him. One day, during my shift, I went to the bathroom on the ground floor. There's almost no light there. Just 3 empty offices and a silent hallway. When I opened the bathroom door, I was startled to see him. Sean was standing in front of the mirror, completely motionless, with the light off. At that moment, he turned around, flipped the switch, and pretended to comb his hair. I left immediately, confused by that strange scene. That Monday, already at the park, I decided to park next to the sidewalk, put on my sneakers, and I started stretching to warm up. The sun was still beating down hard. It was summer, so the sky was slow to darken. Teenagers, young people, and adults arrived with their children to spend the afternoon. I started walking normally, trying to clear my thoughts. Nothing seemed out of place, until I reached the section of the park surrounded by enormous trees, where sunlight barely filtered through. Suddenly, I realized I was the only one walking along that stretch. Something felt off. Something felt out of place. I could have sworn I saw someone behind me out of the corner of my eye a second ago. But when I stopped and turned around, there was no one there. The trees cast shadows across my path. The noise of the cars died down. The footsteps and laughter of the children faded away. A thick calm settled over the atmosphere, and it was thick. There was a peace about it you could cut with a knife. An invisible heaviness began to settle on my skin. No one was coming. No one was laughing. The branches were creaking. My senses were on high alert, waiting for something to jump out at me. Something could jump out into my face at any moment. I stood still for a moment. When nothing happened, I resumed walking, with quick steps accelerated. As I left that section, people reappeared in the distance. The hustle and bustle, the noise grew. The sunset was dying, but the light calmed me. I sketched a faint smile until I heard a rustling behind me. I turned around on instinct, only to see a pile of leaves floating near the ground, as if something, or someone, had emerged from them and sped away. When I got to my car, it was already dark. I was exhausted, eager to get home, but as I drew closer, I once again felt that heaviness from afar. The vertigo, the darkness, the movement of the treetops. It all made me think, what the heck is going on now? I turned around once more. Nothing. I thought I was losing my mind, that it was all just stress. Even so, I hurried, started the car, and drove off. The next morning, I had already forgotten about the incident. Tuesday. The same old routine. However, just as I was about to get into my car, a blow to the chest stopped me. There was a dirt-stained hand on the driver's side mirror that made my blood run cold. I didn't want to let fear get the better of me. I tried to think logically. It was surely some neighbor's prank. I forced myself to believe it, and I went to work. The day went by normally until 4:57 p.m. With my shift almost over, I went down to the bathroom. 2 coworkers were waiting at the door, ready to leave when 5 o'clock struck. When I returned to my desk to gather my things, I saw it. 3 dry leaves on my keyboard. I moved closer. There was no message, just leaves and some dirt staining the keys. I looked up, ready to confront the prankster who had played the joke on me, but something stopped me. An invisible force paralyzed my throat. I couldn't say anything. I just picked up the papers and threw them in the trash. That feeling came back, if only for an instant. When I got to my car, I was afraid I'd find another scratch, but there was nothing. I let out a laugh nervously. I tried to laugh at my own fear. The rest of the day passed without incident. Wednesday. I was more alert, more withdrawn. I felt like a fool under the curious gazes of my coworkers, but I couldn't help it. That night, I had to walk into the park again. I arrived shortly after 6. The air was warm and still. I thought everything that had come before had been an exaggeration of my mind. I did 4 full laps, enjoying the freedom, the wind, and the sun slowly setting. I still had energy for one more. Then, I came back to the path of the great trees. The air suddenly grew cold. A shiver ran down my spine. I slowed down walking, cautiously so as not to trip, and I felt it again. That look, that presence. This time I didn't stop. I kept walking, refusing to look back. But when I stepped out of the shadows and the lights enveloped me, and I couldn't resist, I turned around. In the distance, among the shadows, a dark figure was watching me, standing, motionless. His face was expressionless. I opened my eyes wide. "Frick it," I whispered, and I ran home. Hours later, trapped in my thoughts, panic gripped me again. I locked the doors and the windows. I was determined to call the police if necessary. I spent the night on watch, waiting to see that figure again. Sleep began to overcome me, but before going to bed I went over to close the blinds and I saw her. There it was, that thing standing outside my door, motionless, just like in the park. My heart raced. My breathing became choppy. I closed the blinds, trying to calm myself. When I mustered the courage to look again, the figure had moved closer, closer. Now I could make out its shape. Sleep began to overcome me. But, before going to bed, I went over to close the blind, and I saw him. There it was. That thing was standing outside my door, motionless, just like in the park. My heart raced. My breathing became choppy. I closed the blinds, trying to calm myself. When I mustered the courage to look again, the figure had moved closer, closer. Now I could make out its shape. My mind went blank. That mysterious man seemed familiar to me. I ran to the door, looked through the peephole, and there it was, standing motionless. Sean. He smiled slightly, but that wasn't what scared me the most. What completely froze me was the glint of a huge knife he was holding in his hand. The end. Well, way to end on a cliffhanger, that's for sure. Now, if they were smart and they learned from our last story, all the doors and windows would already be locked, of course. Now, in today's society, I don't doubt that the average person has a phone on them. So, it wouldn't be that bad to call the cops and, if absolutely needed, run to your kitchen if you thought they were going to break the door down or break a window, and grab a knife, or if you have any other types of weapons or things to wait, or even, jump out the back window and keep running. Right. Now, with all that being said, I am a person with ADHD, and I am kind of antisocial when it comes to people at work. I used to work in a bank, and it was absolutely my least favorite thing when I would get invited to work parties or stuff with my coworkers, and so 100% of the time I'd be like, no, I don't want to go. Now, at the bank where I worked, there was one-person bathrooms, so it wasn't like, with a bunch of stalls. It was just one toilet and a sink, and you'd lock the door and no one else would get in. Now, there was a few times, because of my ADHD, when I just got so overstimulated I had to go in the bathroom with the lights off, and I just sit on the toilet and just think for a second and let my mind wander so I could relax. That's something that really helps me when I'm overstimulated, is to just remove all stimulation. So I can understand how that would make me weird, but it also kind of makes me sympathize with the antagonist of the story a little bit. Now, with that being said, dude's a creep. And I sure hope I'm not a creep. But that does kind of lead to having an easy train of thought to understand that this is the guy. You know, the protagonist kind of already saw that this person was weird, or at least different. And so when things started to add up, it wasn't like this huge jarring shock when it was like, oh yeah, that's my coworker out the window, right? Right away oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. So, with that being said, I watched something recently, and it was about a guy talking about how he had an experience of going into a coffee shop, and he decided he was going to try and unplug for a little bit, and he wasn't going to be on his phone or a laptop or nothing. And he was just going to sit there and kind of drink his coffee. And he actually got kicked out of the place because he was freaking too many people out by just sitting there and doing nothing. I think in today's society we're so wired in and so on all the time that we often forget to see little things around us. How many people would see how weird this person was at their work? How many people would notice these little things in our lives? I think if there was a message to take and apply from this story, it's make sure that you're looking around you. Make sure that you're aware of your surroundings. Make sure you're not so coiled up that you're bound to explode. I think if we don't take those moments to destimulate, if we don't take those moments to just appreciate the beauty of the world, the beauty of the trees, the birds, the grass, the roads, the cars, the buildings, truly there really wasn't any point in us existing in that specific spot anyways. How many people in the world would kill just to live where you live, to be in this part of the world that you're in, to be able to enjoy these many great blessings that you have? So, with that being said, do not let your good things that are in your life, do not let these small things go unappreciated. I know that if you're able to take a moment and reflect on these things, take a moment to unplug, take a moment to be present, it will help your mental state. It will help you to be less anxious. It will help you to be more present. It will help you to be a more concise person who is able to articulate their thoughts and feelings and emotions better, instead of being so coiled up and anxious and depressed and angry, like how it seems everybody in the world wants us to be. With that, once again, I'm Cece. If you have any other thoughts, any other lessons, or any changes that you would have done in this story, please let me know. I appreciate all the support. And with that, ends today's video. I hope you all enjoyed. And again, if you made it this far in the video, please consider subscribing, as it is free and you can change your mind later. Once again, I'm Cece. Thank you for listening to my thoughts. Thank you for supporting me, and hopefully wanting to hear more. And with that, I love you all. Goodbye.